Hey guys, what's up? It's Flynn here, and today we're going to be talking about the proposed changes for both Nyx and Titania that were posted in a dev workshop by DE Rebecca a couple of hours ago. If you're new to Warframe and this is your first time ever hearing about a dev workshop, basically a dev workshop is a forum post made by a DE staff member in regards to an upcoming change to either a Warframe or a game mechanic that is going to affect the game in some serious manner where DE feel they need community feedback, right? So this is basically a list of proposed changes, all subject to change, and then based on what people say in the comments of this forum post or, anywhere else like Reddit or anything, they're going to take all of that feedback into consideration and then change up the proposed changes based off what the community says, right? So today, we're talking about Nyx and Titania, two very, very underwhelming frames in the eyes of the Warframe community, because whenever you compare what they're supposed to do to other frames who do more or less the same thing, these two frames come out at the bottom, right? Nyx is meant to be a CC/defense frame who is outclassed by Frost, Limbo, Gara, you name it, it has CC or defense capabilities, it outclasses Nyx. And then Titania, who's meant to be like a damage dealer buffer, I just think that the playstyle is kind of all over the place whenever it comes to Titania. The main selling point is you can turn into a pixie and deal a lot of damage. The damage output is okay. It's just the widespread damage dealing and the buffing, the system or playstyle of Titania is kind of all over the place, right? So they want to kind of streamline that a little bit more and make it more focused so it's easier to understand and it's easier to play, right? So I'm basically going to be reading straight from this dev workshop. The gameplay that you can see in the background is just gameplay of me playing Nyx and Titania, and you'll see, the relevant gameplay whenever we're talking about the relevant frame, right? So first up is Nyx and then Titania. So hopefully you guys can kind of get an idea as to how I play either of the frames based off just watching the gameplay, right? So let's just go ahead and jump straight into the forum post, right? So this is all DE Rebecca's words coming straight off the screen, and any super important information I'm going to have displayed so you guys can read it for yourself. So they start off by saying, "Hi all, we're going to cover the ability refresh of two of Warframe's most elegant gals, Nyx and Titania. Nyx, wielding the power of psychic energy, makes CC and defense her speciality. We're going to add a flavor of debuff to that to increase the roles she can play in a mission," which, that's pretty good. But the real question is, whenever it comes to like these frame changes and reworks and whatnot, is this going to make me want to use Nyx over the likes of the frames that I already used to replace Nyx, right? I need to be able to have more options whenever it comes to the specific role that Nyx has to fill in a mission. So right now, her kind of goal is to fill that crowd control defense void. What is it about Nyx that is going to make me want to choose her over the likes of Frost or Limbo, or if you're comparing just CC in general, Loki, right? Because Loki does the exact same thing that Nyx does, but just better because he completely disarms enemies, right? And it's a lot more spammable, at least in my opinion, because like you can stun enemies who originally have weapons just by spamming your fourth ability. You can kind of stun them with Nyx, but the thing is with Nyx is whenever you kill a bunch of enemies, those enemies who are chaosed, mind controlled by chaos, they can still target you, right? So she's not perfect, where Loki has that kind of extra added effect, which makes him just that step above Nyx, right? So moving on, we say Titania has CC and offense with a pile of auras she can maintain to stack buffs and debuffs. Our plans with Titania come down to making all of that a little less of a hassle to pull off. So that's good. Like they're wanting to streamline the kit, which in my opinion is the step in the right direction whenever it comes to Titania. But the other thing is like understanding her kit for a lot of players is kind of like what does her abilities do? Unless you're like reading from the ability screen, you don't really know, right? If I was to explain Titania to you, like a new player, it would be like, okay, so you press 4, you turn yourself into a pixie. There's this augment where if you spam all of your abilities, you can get like a movement speed and fire rate buff, which is going to make you a lot faster and you're going to deal a lot more damage. And then that's basically it, right? That's how you play Titania. And then you stack 2 times arcane velocity. And then you turn into basically a pixie who can shred bosses who Mesa can't lock onto, right? That is Titania summed up in a sentence or two, right? So let's go ahead and move on to what she has to say next. As far as usage stats go, Nyx, when combined with Nyx Prime and Titania, hover just above the bottom 10 on average for our player base. They certainly have a niche, and those who know their abilities well know how big of an impact they can have on missions. We hope those who already love Nyx or Titania keep the love alive, and those who root them off take a second look. And that kind of winds back to, are these changes going to make me like consider these frames whenever I compare them to the other frames that already fill that gap which Nyx or Titania look to fill, right? I doubt that all of these changes are going to do that, but it's a step in the right direction. So first, we're going to be talking about Nyx, right? Nyx is one of our earliest released Warframes, making her appearance in the closed beta version of Warframe. Since that was more than 5 years ago, we are taking the time with this rework to also completely redo her audio as well. Still rooted in what we know, we'll be updating her sound library to 2018 standards. Your ears are in for a treat. On to the powers. We're getting a new passive. Enemies can't seem to truly target Nyx and all receive an accuracy debuff against her. Now that's good, but this is also kind of going to contradict her fourth ability, which I'll talk about whenever we get to. Nyx is receiving a new passive overall. The random disarm was on theme, but feedback over time has also slanted toward new passive, please. Mind control. So this is before. Nyx picks a single target within range and brings them to the Tenno side for a given duration. The problem this had was the target never really felt powerful, so there's no scaling there whenever it comes to the likes of a defense or a survival mission, and the target never really helped out. Sure, sometimes you'd pick out a bombarder, you'd pick out a heavy gunner or an ancient healer, and then that would be on your side, because that's, those are some targets that are rather annoying and you kind of just want to take them out of the fight with the press of a button. But like, they'll die really quick and they kind of just get forgotten about, right? After you use the ability, that duration runs out and then they're back to being a normal enemy, and then you have to kill them. It's like, did I even mind control something? And it's kind of just like, eh. So the change that they're adding to that is Nyx still picks a single target within range and brings them to the Tenno side for a given duration. But now she can multiply the damage output of that enemy by her own hand. The target will have a 4-second wind-up period to absorb your weapon damage, which is on a multiplier to enhance its output damage. For example, the numbers aren't final here. Every 2,500 damage is equal to 1.5 times damage output of the target. We've also included better follow Nyx behavior to have the target stay with her. This feels really engaging in practice and adds just a bit more activity to your Nyx play. Your targets become more valuable and you get to focus on your weapon gameplay in the 4-second window to really pump them up. And Nyx should also always choose their victim wisely. I for some reason messed up on the always. I don't understand why. But this all sounds great and everything, but I'd also like enemy fire to amplify the output of them as well. I think that would, make a lot of sense, because like having to just stand there and pump damage in that one enemy. If you see how I play rather fast. I'm always jumping over enemies' heads. Unless I'm using the likes of an Archiplasmor or a kick gun that has kind of like a wide spread, then I'm probably not going to, stand there and shoot an enemy for 4 seconds, right? I'm probably still not going to use this ability, to be completely honest with you, unless the damage that these heavy gunners and bombards and stuff do is absolutely insane. But it's still not, in my opinion, a worthwhile ability for me to care about, right? Whenever it comes to the general gameplay, like I said, unless the damage that I can pump in to a lot of these enemies is absolutely crazy. But that being said, some weapons that you're going to be using, so for example, the likes of status chance weapons, are going to be at a severe disadvantage here, right? Because we don't know if slash procs and gas procs and toxin procs are going to affect the actual damage output. Will we be able to affect the mind-controlled enemy with the likes of a status proc, or is it just going to be the raw damage for our weapon? These are things that we don't know yet, so it's important to not write that off right now. So moving on to her second ability, Psychic Bolts. So before, Nyx launches a cluster of force bolts at an enemy, or at enemies, using telekinesis to adjust flight paths and seek nearby targets. The number of bolts and damage dealt, including a radiation status chance made up entirely of its power, wasn't unique enough and on its own, it didn't offer enough in high level missions. So this ability just fell off, like bye-bye, right? So after, this is no longer a flat damage ability, but it is now a debuff. All enemies hit lose a percentage of defenses. Values for shield / armor have 20, 40, 60, 80% of defense removed, which is really, really good in my opinion for a short duration, 5, 7, 9, 11 seconds, which is good because like you're going to be modding for duration on Nyx anyway, making them easier to kill or kill each other when combined with chaos. Infested will receive a slowing behavior, not the same percentage curve as defense is still tweaking, plus the activation of Ancient's auras, which is really, really nice. We'll be doing a presentation cleanup as well for more of a psychic feel in the telekinesis. So that sounds great. I think that's great. The only concern I have is if you're modding for, you know, just let's say streamline and then throwing the rest into duration, you need to have some way to keep your energy up, right? So Xeneric, energy pads, etc. Realistically, not that big of a deal because we have so many ways of getting our energy back, but that would be the only concern if you're spamming this ability a lot. And then the other thing, like an endgame player could say is, well, I already have cruiser projection, right? I'm always using 4 times cruiser projection, so this doesn't really make a difference to me. That's totally fine as well. Like I can totally see that. So early game, I think this is good. Going into late game, yeah, because you're only really focusing on the shields at that point, right? Taking away those shields, sure, fine, but the likes of gas procs and toxin procs already go through shields, same with slash procs, right? So really down to you whether or not you think this is worth it, but it's good for newer players and players who pick up Nyx early in the star chart, because like let's say you use your second ability on an armored enemy, then you use your heck to finish it off. Awesome, great ability, you know? So now we're moving on to Absorb. So this is the 4th ability actually. They didn't mention any changes to Chaos. Chaos isn't getting any changes because it's her strongest ability. It's just a widespread crowd control. You press free, everything is fighting one another. But at the end of that crowd control, there's still that one enemy who survives, who is still going to shoot you, right? So you mod for range duration, still a really good ability. So moving on to Absorb. Before, Nyx absorbs all incoming damage and channels that collected energy into an explosive radial discharge that deals magnetic damage. Magnetic damage doesn't always perform well, and a single damage type doesn't feel like an absorb, right? That's actually interesting. I didn't even know it was magnetic damage until I read that there, because I don't play Nyx and I don't really research Nyx either. I just thought it was like a random damage number, but apparently it's magnetic damage, and magnetic damage isn't so good, at least in the current meta, but that might change with, you know, the Fortuna orbs, depending on what type of resistances they have. But yeah, so the after is Nyx absorbs all incoming damage and channels that collected energy into an explosive radial discharge. But now we've made the damage type output dynamic based on incoming damage types. If it is fed in, it feeds out. Absorb is a very unique power. When augmented, it allows for a completely different kind of play. Alone, Absorb gives Nyx immortality in a pinch and can CC with knockdown, but now we just added another edge in it, giving dynamic damage, which, you know, that's great. Awesome. So you're making Absorb have a little bit more damage potential. Great. Cool. I've got no problem with that. Titania. Moving on to Titania. Titania joined us in 2016 as a part of the Silver Grove quest, and her playful, fae, and nature inspirations have always been the root of her enhancement-like control and destruction. We're just making those things a little stronger. So we have Tribute. Before, Tribute had to be cast multiple times on multiple enemy types to build up 4 unique auras on Titania. The problem here was it was too much casting. Definitely agree, but the thing is, the way I play Titania with the Razorwing Blitz, I'm doing that anyway, right? Because you have to spam abilities to get that buff with your Razorwing Blitz, so that wasn't really that big of an issue for me. So moving on to the after, simply getting one type of tribute will be enough to have its maximum power. You can continue to acquire tributes to refresh the duration, but you no longer need to build them up, which is really, really good. So as for the 4 tribute types, Dust, keep it as it is. It reduces enemy accuracy by 50%. Thorns increases to 50% of damage reflected back to the attacker. Entangle, keep as is. 1 entangled tribute slows an enemy by 25%. And then Full Moon, the 75% damage buff now applies to all sentinels, moas, companions, and razorwing butterflies. So pretty solid, right? I probably couldn't have even told you what those buffs did, or buffs and debuffs did, before reading that. That's because, again, I don't play Titania a lot, and the only reason I do use Titania is to, like, burst down a Lephantis who has augmented armor, or the Lephantises that spawn in Plague Star, right? That's the only time that I'm using Titania. And like I said, I'm using the Razorwing Blitz augment, right? So I'm spamming my abilities, usually spamming my 1 to get those buffs, even though I didn't know what they did. So then I can get the Razorwing Blitz buff for the increased fire rate, increased movement speed. So moving on to Lantern, we've got the before of Lantern. Lantern was a single target ability that could result in wildly bouncing enemies, making it hard to achieve the core function of attracting witless enemies. And then the after, Lantern can now be cast up to 4 targets with better tethered victims. You'll be able to explode all targets by holding the Lantern cast down. Really, really cool. So it's just more of a CC ability with kind of like a knockdown, I guess, mechanic to it by making it explode, which, you know, awesome, cool. Probably still not going to use this ability a lot, but it just adds a little bit more to your kit if you're planning on modding for, you know, a little bit of range, and then you have that duration on there if you're modding for Razorwing Blitz or just Razorwing in general, because that's going to slow down that drain over time, right? You need prime continuity plus fleeting plus streamline, decent bit of duration on there, so then you're not like depleting your energy as fast as the Flash whenever you're using your 4th ability, right? So we actually have some changes for Razorwing as well. Before, a lot of bunking to pick up loot, so they're probably just going to add vacuum. Yeah, Razorwing will simply receive a vacuum to make acquiring loot, energy, etc. easier. Remember, less of a hassle. So that's really, really good. These changes have felt pretty great in early testing, but of course are subject to change. If you've been watching our streams, you may know most of this already, but we wanted to write it out for everyone to check it out. Stay tuned to Fortuna Part 2, notes for full information on Nyx and Titania. So that is basically all the changes. I don't think that I'm going to feel the urge to go back and play those frames though, because like it's not necessarily a rework, right? They're not changing up how the frames play or making them more appealing. They're just kind of adding little tweaks here and there to make the quality of life on both of those frames a little bit better, at least in my opinion. I think the Nyx changes are the most in-depth, definitely. Like the ones on Psychic Bolts are really, really good, and the ones on Absorb is really, really good as well. Absorb might have like a little bit more potential than it already did, because it was still an ability that I used to defend pods and stuff and knock down enemies, but now that it has adapting damage types and stuff like that, it's going to be even better. But yeah, like it's really down to you. Mind Control is still an ability, which unless the damage scaling, which I'm assuming it already is based off the numbers that they give, but they did say in this post that the numbers aren't final. I think hopefully it's going to deal a pretty awesome amount of damage. The only thing that I have problem with is how you go about storing that damage. I would rather they just made it so that the enemy had like a flat multiplier based off the level, like increasing levels had like more of a multiplier for Mind Control. That way I didn't have to stand still, because I kind of feel like that takes away from the fast-paced nature and gameplay of Warframe in general, because like I said, I play this game rather fast, so I don't know, it's kind of down to them making something that works for everybody, right? So I can definitely appreciate that, but I don't see myself using Mind Control a lot, but that is just my opinion. But otherwise it sounds like a good change, and yeah, Titania changes sound pretty decent, right? It's nothing insane either. Still don't feel like I'm going to be checking out these frames all that much after these changes, though. That is just me. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching this video or listening to me ramble on this video. If you guys enjoyed it, hit that like button below. And if you'll see more Warframe content from me, hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.